Good evening. I already see is this Gerangela Lodowica. Good night, good night, good night. It's great to see you on already. Welcome to the 76th episode 76. Can you imagine? Episode 76 of CovidCastJA Business, brought to you by the private sector organization of Jamaica, through the commitment of our sponsors, the NCB Group and JMMB Group. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tonight's topic, I know you have been waiting. For those of you who attended the conference, the Building Wealth Conference, if you attended on Sunday, you would have heard from our first guest tonight, Lisandra Rickards, and I know the comments were just blowing up. So we thought it was very important that Lisandra join us tonight, but tonight is a special night because Lisandra is going to take you through your personality and money, building on some of what was presented at the conference. Then I'm going to hand over hosting duties to Lisandra, and she's going to be joined by our second guest, Sonia Wynter. She will introduce Sonia, but let me tell you, now is the time. Get on those WhatsApp quickly, make those calls, put it in your groups, let everybody know, stop what you're doing so that you can join us live for your personality and money. A very, very, very important episode. We're almost at the end of 2021. We can't start out 2022 on the same kind of unsure levels. Let us understand some of the drivers for our financial decisions. Remember what we say? Broke no good again, it nah keep. We are talking about building our financial wealth, understanding how our personality affects our relationship with money, because that affects sustainable budgeting and the management of our goals. So personality tests, and I'm not even going to give a big introduction of what personality tests are all about, because why would I do that when we have an expert in our midst? Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, please let your friends know. Put it in the groups. Don't bother send any stories in the groups. No memes. Stop what you're doing and join us on CovidCastJA, because Lisandra Rickards, who is the CEO and co-founder of Soul Career, she's also the former CEO of the Richard Branson Center of Entrepreneurship and a Harvard MBA. She helps executives, entrepreneurs, and high-achieving professionals succeed by connecting them to knowledge, opportunities, and systems that support their growth while staying aligned to their authentic selves. As CEO of the Richard Branson Center, by the way, she coached over 220 entrepreneurs, created online programs for over 2,500 entrepreneurs, and built a team of 12 and made the center a player in the venture capital space. Now, she is absolutely delighted to lead Soul Career, a coaching company supported by online courses that helps executives, professionals, and entrepreneurs discover their life's work, lead authentically, and build powerful legacies. And you have her at your disposal tonight to ask all kinds of questions. Make sure that you are already letting all of your friends know, and take a picture of yourself watching Lisandra and put it on Instagram so that people can know what they should be doing. Lisandra,
hi.
Welcome.
Thank you, Rashi. What an intro. Thank you so much for that. Hearing you say those words just made me feel like, wow. Thank you for that intro, Rashi.
No, and I'm so excited about tonight. Looking at the various comments from the conference, we realized that people wanted us to delve deeper.
Yes.
And some of the people were asking, tell me a little bit more about these personality tests and psychometrics. I'm still a little skeptical. Can you tell us a little bit about these personality tests and what is this whole field of psychometrics about?
Yes. I got a lot of messages on LinkedIn and Instagram too after the conference, because people are very curious, as you said. So human beings are very complex. We're very complex creatures, hard to predict. Mm-hmm. And so the psychometrics tries to put us into some broad categories for us to be able to understand ourselves better, understand each other better, and understand how to communicate effectively with people who are very different from us. Wow. However, there's a disclaimer that I want to put here that we layer on top of our personality. We have our training and our education. We have our childhood experiences. We have our adult work experiences. So the expression of our personalities are different based on these different experiences. So we cannot typecast people exactly based on psychometrics, but there's still a very valuable tool in helping us to understand these underlying motivations, impulses that we have that we may not otherwise be able to explain to ourselves or to other people.
Yes, and I am glad that you went straight into that aspect of it, because I think a lot of people, the skepticism, they're like, I hear about your test and I answer some question and they give me some letters, but
Yes.
you don't know my story. You don't know where I'm coming from. And what are you saying, that all of these other people in the whole wide world that have this particular set of indicators all always stay the same? They're like, no. But you set that out for us because it is very important to, even as a frame of reference, that we understand some of our drivers. So let's talk about these Myers-Briggs
Yes.
indicators. And,
Yes.
and viewers, we have a memo available on smallbusinessportal.com. And remember, you can email us at sme@psoj.org. I have it right here with me, very easy and handy, that you're going to need. And you may want to print it off. So
Yes.
tell us about these Myers-Briggs indicators, Lisandra.
Yes, so the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, MBTI, it's one of the oldest personality tests that exist. And many people have taken it. I think on the website that I recommend, where you can do it for free, 16personalities.com, 250 million people have taken the test on that website. So it is one, yes. So it is one of the most widely used personality type tests, and everybody that has done any kind of psychometrics can usually just rattle off their 4 letters. It's a language, a common language that people have, and it's based on the teachings of Carl Jung. So very old kind of teachings. So basically it divides personalities into 4 broad categories. Extroversion versus introversion is the first categories, and that is where we get our energy from. So extroverts get their energy from interacting with other people. So it's not about the people who go to a conference and can work the room. That's not the hallmark of an extrovert. Hallmark of an extrovert is that they don't like spending time by themselves. They have to be in a supermarket. They have to be in a coffee shop. They have to be socializing with people. That's the hallmark of an extrovert. Whereas an introvert needs to spend time by themselves to recover, to process, to reflect, to regain their energy before going back out into the world, because they get exhausted, depleted interacting with too many people. So that's the first category. Should I continue?
Yes. Did you have like some graphics around with some visuals? Because you know, sometimes we think with the picture them up too.
Yes, I do. So let me just share them right now.
You know, and as you're saying that, you know, there are these broad categories. And, you know, as you describe the extroverts and the introverts, you know, sometimes we have like, we have some extrovert leanings, but we have some introvert times.
Yes. So the Myers-Briggs test on 16personalities.com actually gives you a percentage, right? A percentage result. So I'm a 78% extrovert, which is often shocking to some people, but I cannot be at home by myself for too long before I go mad. Whereas some people are right on the board of 52%.
Like me.
Yeah. So you can flip either way, and then the introverts would be less than 50%. So it's a scale, and no one is 100% of anything, really. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, all right. So let's talk about extroversion and introversion, and what next?
So next we have how we process information. So this is the sensing types versus the intuitive types. So sensitive types, they need to touch and feel and see in order to understand the information. So they need numbers. They need very practical things. They need to touch the thing to know that it's real. Whereas intuitives look for hidden meaning and bigger insights and connecting the dots and the mystical nature of the universe. Anybody that talks about the universe and the mystical nature, that's an intuitive for sure. So that's a big picture thinker. So then the third category is how we make decisions. And we have the very logical, analytical, rational thinkers, the T's, versus the people who make decisions based on how they feel, on their value system, on their emotions, and how their decisions affect other people. So those are the Fs. So T versus F.
Okay.
And then the fourth category is the one that I find the most interesting for money, actually, which is how we organize our world. Judgers versus perceivers. And judges is a harsh terminology in my mind, but
Yes.
yes.
It's
So,
rough, judgy.
yeah, it has negative connotations, right? But what it really means is that you need to understand the world through specific structures and compartments. And you like things to be very organized, and you like things to go in the right place. So you process the world and organize the world through these structures and compartments, really. And then P's are more like water. They're very fluid. They're very in the gray area in between the line. So they like to keep their options open. They don't like to be restricted by process and structure. They like to flow between the lines. They're very free-spirited and very fluid people. And that has many, many impacts for how they manage their money.
Okay. So we have the energy,
Yes.
the information, how we make the decisions,
Right.
and the fourth category. Yeah.
You're good. You're A plus, Rochelle. You have a good photographic memory right there. And
Yeah,
then
and I can tell you. So let me share with the viewers because I double checked mine. I'm a ENFJ and A for the assertive. And I didn't like the J, the judgy one. It sounded judgy. And I scored like pretty high on the J, but also high on the feelings, which was and you know that when you see these results, you start getting judgmental of, okay, I'm not this, I'm not that. When people receive these results, how do you suggest, before we even get to how you align it with your money decisions, how should you treat with it? Because we can't start self-flagellating. Like, I don't really think I'm bad. This is who I really am. Yeah.
yes, absolutely. I love that you brought this up because people read these results, and actually the disc, which I use more of, they read those results, and that language can be very, very harsh on the disc. And they start to self-flagellation and start judging themselves. I'm not supposed to be like this. I need to be a different person than this. And actually, how I strongly recommend, and what I've had to do a lot of work on myself, is one, view these as guidelines to your natural impulses around organization, decisions, etc., not as a judgment on yourself at all, and just to understand these different aspects and embrace them. We all have strengths and weaknesses, and we all have a role to play with those strengths and weaknesses. And there is no ideal type. I'm a P, and I wish I was a J in some instance, like especially when it comes to money. It was a struggle for me to become disciplined around money, even though I studied finance, because my impulse was to use money to feel good. Right?
Yeah.
So,
and sometimes the descriptions make you want to be this other person rather than saying, well, this is me and this is how I utilize the strengths in these areas and how I can work on some of these things. So audience, what we've done, and Carice, I see you, Dwayne, Max, how you do? Long time I don't see you. Winsome, Denise, Maxine, good evening. It's so great to have you all on. So what we just had was what we call the praise and worship, where we kind of set the stage of the descriptors of the personality type. So, and we also explained, Lisandra went through, there's no judgment with this. This is a guide as you make decisions generally in your life, in your workspace, but very importantly, as we talk about money tonight. So, Lisandra, people are on the edge of their seat and they're saying, all right, I remember my score, or I'm going to secretly do the Myers-Briggs now. But ahead of that, I just kind of want to understand how that fit in with my money decisions. Yes. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So I would love to know, the audience, if you know your type, I would love to see you type it in the chat, your 4 letters. I see Jillian, I know what her 4 letters are. She shared them with me over LinkedIn, right? So we have ENFJ, or J, very similar to you, Rochelle, but he's a T, turbulent, versus you're more assertive. INFJ, Cleopatra, wonderful. Keep them coming, guys. Yes. So basically, you know what I've learned before I answer your question, Rochelle? I've learned that the bulk of people in corporate Jamaica are J's. I come across very few P's in my client base, very, very few P's. In fact, you'll find P's in the creative space more often, the filmmakers, the artists, the songwriters. You don't really find them in the corporate space. So sometimes I feel like I'm a lone P amongst a bunch of J's. So
but then it balances out with the other descriptors. So it was the same thing with the J. I was like, but I'm really a P. I'm a free spirit. But when I read it, I'm like, I'm not. I'm a J.
Right. So we have a lot of INFJs and ENFJs in the building. Wonderful to know.
Hi, Winsome. Winsome is an INFJ.
Yes.
Yes.
16personalities.com, Johan. So how does this affect our money? So I have quite a few slides on that. So let me just make it very short and to the point. So extroverts need to talk about their money decisions, while introverts are very much in their head, processing, analyzing before they come to it. They overthink and process internally. Extroverts, I need to talk to Rochelle. Who's your broker, Rochelle? I need to talk to my friend Christian. Christian, who is your broker? What decisions are you making? Okay, where should I go? What are you doing with this? I need to talk to everybody before I come to right? Right? So that's extroverts versus introverts. Now, sensors versus intuitive. Sensors, very practical. So they know their budget inside out. They have a budget. They check their bank account every day. They know where every dollar is going and where it's being spent because they like that visual. They like to see what's happening. Intuitives, they don't want to be constricted like that. So they're more big picture thinkers. Just give me the highlights, the big, just the headlines at the end of the month. I don't need to know the details during the month. Yeah. Then we have
until you watch the Spiritual Laws of Money with Nevada, and that's available on smallbusinessportal.com. And the ends start checking those balances daily. Continue, Lisandra.
Exactly. And actually, I want to say that there are types that it's easy for them to follow the spiritual laws of money. And there are types where it's very, very difficult and challenging, right? Yes. So my type, extremely hard for me to follow. I have to trick myself, like put in automations and hide some accounts, hide my investment account, don't have any debit cards related to. I have to really trick myself to follow those laws. Whereas the other more disciplined types, the ISTJ, ISFJ, ESTJ, ESFJ, very disciplined types, it's like a second nature to follow the spiritual laws of money. So that's another interesting tidbit there. So then we reach the thinkers versus the feelers. Now, I use this example in the conference. How many of you guys would go for the apartment that is beautiful and makes you feel good and feel inspired over the apartment that fits in your budget, right? And for me, I will go for the inspirational apartment every day, all day, because when I feel good, I can make more money. So feeling good is essential to me making money. So don't tell me about the budget apartment. If it doesn't feel right, I'm not going to take that, right? But everybody in the conference had budget. So I was like, it's me one going with my feelings over the budget. And I
suppose if your budget and your feelings are high enough, then you can work them together.
Right? So I see some people agreeing with me. Yes. Richard is agreeing. Yan is agreeing. Marilyn is agreeing. So we see some of the ENFs here all agreeing with me. And so finally, we get to the biggest difference between how we manage money in the Myers-Briggs, which is the J versus the P, right? Mm-hmm. So the Ps have a really hard time with discipline. I have to trick myself to go to the gym on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? I have to trick myself into a discipline. I have to read Atomic Habits and do all these things because I like spontaneity. I like everything to be different every day. That is a hallmark of a P. So sticking to the plan in the terms of a budget, very, very difficult for a P. Even creating the budget, Ps tend to be spendthrifts. Ps like to spend money and like to, not think about it, and I'll manifest more money when I need it. Whereas Js are very disciplined and structured, and they want to know what the budget is and where it's going every month and so on. So that's how big picture, because there's a lot of nuance in there, but big
Yes,
picture,
because
yeah.
I am disciplined that way with the budget and knowing where I am with the budget. But I'm also rather free spirited that
Yeah.
when I feel down or I see something that I really like, I hope that the money is going to manifest somewhere else as I go and get it. Yeah. So
So
as you see, there are nuances. Yeah.
the discipline is your J, and the feelings is your F.
Is yes.
So those are what are offsetting each other in that example that you gave right there. Yeah. Yeah. So Marilyn is saying she feels like she's part P, even though she's a J.
Yeah.
Again, I would say, is it the P or is it the F? Right?
She got it. She's like, oh, you're Martin, you're alike. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, so that's where the nuance, it's how these different, because they're not in isolation from each other, they all play off each other. So it's how the different things combine into a direction, an impulse that's in you around money and business decisions.
Yeah. So when you take all of these and you bear these in mind, how then do you utilize this information to assist with better money management?
Yes. So you have to look at all 4 letters in tandem and the whole personality in order to make some decisions here around money. And I'm seeing on the backstage chat, I'm seeing our clinical psychologist has some things that she's saying. We can't wait to get her onto. So yes, we have to look at all the 4 letters. And this is where I'd like to share with you my screen on the different types in more detail. So let me do that right now. Okay.
So Jaron Jello just did a test and you are a defender.
ISFJ.
Yes. So we're actually going to talk about that now. So you did it just in time.
All right. So are you seeing the screen? Good.
See the screen.
All right. So the first category. So we divide the 16 personalities into 4 categories. And the first category we're going to talk about is the analyst. So the analysts are the N and T types, intuitive thinking types that are known for their intellectual excellence. So Nevada is an INTJ. He's an architect personality, imaginative and strategic thinkers with a plan for everything. So I didn't see any T types in the chat. If the T's are hiding, let's see the T's, because very logical, very structured, rational thinkers. So these types are actually very structured in their approach to money management. So even though they have the N, the imagination, the intuition, they do have the thinking and the judging, right? Or the thinking and the perceiving, and those 2 things play off of each other. Now, these types tend to be very analytical. They love to study. They love to break things apart. It's like an engineering type. A debating type too is in here. But the P versus J comes into context here as well. So, for example, we have an intuitive thinker who is a P, the logistician in the middle here, INTP, and the debater, ENTP. So these are, the INTP is a mad scientist type, right? Inventor who likes to tinker away in the lab and don't bother me with any administrative details. Whereas the debater, they like to break things apart and analyze them and discuss them, and right? And the P in their personalities make them very resistant to a structure being imposed on them.
Okay.
So even in these categories, we have the nuances.
Yes. And you're able to see the descriptors that Lisandra has put up, and we'll share these slides on smallbusinessportal.com. So we have the architect, imaginative and strategic thinkers with a plan for everything. Yes. The logician, the thing come back me. Innovative inventors with an unquenchable thirst for, and I like these descriptions. It make it sound like, it sound like good people. Commanders, bold, imaginative and strong-willed leaders, always finding a way or making one. And the debaters, smart and curious thinkers who cannot resist an intellectual challenge. These are this is fantastic information. I remember we're going to share it. So we have the analyst. Who else do we have? Oh, the diplomats now.
So this is the category that I am in, that you're in, Rochelle. all NF types fall into this category. So NF types are known for being very empathetic, mission-driven, idealism in some respects. I like to replace the word idealism with mission-driven. So
Yes.
you won't find NF types in careers that don't make them come alive, that don't align with their purpose. They feel very out of alignment when they're in careers that are not purpose-driven. They have to be in their purpose to be happy in their jobs, right? So that's the NF type, mission-driven. So we have the INFJ, the advocate, quiet, mysterious, very inspiring, and tireless idealists. However, the INFJs are very good workers. Jelani is an INFJ. They're very good at getting things done in an organization. We have the mediators, INFPs. So this is the introverted nature, and we have the extroverted one, which is my type. So the INFPs are the nurturing, soulful types, the tree huggers. They want to save the world. There are lots of doctors that are actually INFPs. They're kind, they're very giving, always eager to help and have a good cause. Then you have the protagonist, a strong leader personality, which you are, Rochelle. These are the charismatic leaders. Barack Obama is an ENFJ, okay? Charismatic.
My friend B?
Yeah, he's an ENFJ. That's right. That's right. Right? So these are the charismatic and inspiring leaders who can mesmerize their listeners. Listen, if you guys ever saw the comments coming out of the conference about Rochelle's leadership of the conference and her moderation, people were mesmerized by Rochelle. We are always mesmerized by her. She is hypnotic. She can connect, right? That is her ENFJ spirit coming through. Then we have my type, the campaigner, enthusiastic. Every single personality test I've ever taken in life, the enthusiasm is off the charts. Enthusiastic, creative, sociable, free spirit who can always find a reason to smile. And it's very hard to keep us in a strict 9-to-5 structure because we can't. It's hard for us to work like that. We need to work from a coffee shop one day, from an office one day, from home one day, etc., etc. Oh, I need to speed up, Rochelle, because yes, I'm looking at the time. So let me hurry up. Next, they have the Sentinel category, which I actually do a leadership program for Jamaica producers, and 90% of the people in that program are ISFJs, the defender personality. We
had a defender earlier in the chat.
Yes.
Very interesting. Yes.
They are the core of the modern workforce. They're very dedicated. They are traditionalists. They like structure. They like order. They're very warm. They're protective. They're very family oriented. This is the heartbeat of the modern workforce. And I know we have a lot of ISFJs in Jamaica and on the call. I see some ISFPs here. So we soon get to you, Hope Ton, because you have the most interesting category. But we're in the Sentinels category. So Sentinels, sensing, judging types, are known for their practicality and their focus on stability and security. So they want to predict their income. They want to know their salary. They don't like change. They don't like to be disoriented. They don't like surprises. So we have the logistician, Jilly Jackson is on. She is an ISTJ, practical and fact-minded individuals whose reliability cannot be doubted. They are very logical, very practical, very organized. Like you cannot get anything past an ISTJ. I don't bother even try. Then we have the ESTJ, the executive. So again, they're great administrators. They're great at organization, but they're extroverted. So they are often you see them in the leadership team of organizations, unsurpassed at managing things and people. Great administrators. And then we have finally ESFJ, very similar to ESTJ, but more feelings, more emotions in there. Wow. Extraordinarily caring, social, and popular people, always eager to help, but within a structured setting that's stable and secure.
Marilyn, I see that question. We're going to get to that question after the next slide, because of course Marilyn wants to know, how does this compare to the DISC test? I was waiting on this question.
Yes, I love the disc. Okay, explorers. So we had Hopeton, who is an ISFP. So the explorers, this is the sensing, perceiving types. These are the enigmas of the world, the virtuosos. They are known for spontaneity, experimentation, flexibility. They are innovative. They like to do all sorts of different things, variety, spontaneity. They don't like anything named routine and repetition. So
Ah,
ISTPs, the virtuoso, bold and practical experimenters, masters of all kinds of tools. So one of the general managers at Jamaica Producers, he's an ISTP. He's one of 2 ISTPs in 40 people in my program. He flies planes, skydives, runs a company. Like, he just has all sorts of interests all over the place.
yes.
Exactly. ISTP. Then we have the ISFP, flexible and charming artists. They're more artistic, always ready to explore and experience something new. My content management manager is an ISFP. Every day is something different. She has to be experimenting all the time. Then we have ESTP, the entrepreneur, smart, energetic, very perceptive, really enjoy living right on the edge. They have to be pushing boundaries all the time. And then the ESFP, spontaneous, energetic, enthusiastic. Life is never boring around them. Karaoke night, they get up on the stage and they're singing. Yes.
Wow. So we've gone through
Yes.
the analysts, the defenders, of course, I don't remember all of them right now because I have to go back through this. And, like as you're listening, you're finding yourself in this, but you're like, actually, I'm a little more like that. But it also helps you to start thinking how your experiences, your environment have helped to shape. Somebody said earlier in the chat that they found that even their decision making has changed over time. So, first question, does your personality, this test, can it change over time? Like you do it in a 5-year period and it could be come up with different results?
So, how I'll answer this question is, when you're under 26, it's very hard to get a proper read on a psychometric test because your brain is still developing. Your brain and your prefrontal cortex, and Sonia can tell us all these things, it's not fully developed up until the age of 26. So if you took the test in your 20s, it's very likely that you could get a very different result when you reach 30, etc.
So those of us who over 26 here, we know, yes, but cortex, my frontal lobe.
It picks up. So once you're older now, the test tends to be more stable over time. However, your life experiences can shift usually just one of the factors. You'll see changing the percentage, how deep you are into it over time. For example, when I was younger, the P was 80-90% P. And now I'm actually right on the border between a P and a J after becoming the CEO of the brand center and having to be much more organized and disciplined. I swung more and more to the J side. But so you might see that kind of change on one of the factors, but it's very, very unlikely that more than one will change after you've fully matured as an individual. Yeah.
Okay. I will take Marilyn's question. She says, I like the DISC test results more though. Do you compare the DISC results to spending habits as well?
That's an interesting. So let me explain a little bit what DISC is. So DISC is more about how you behave in the workplace. It's a very career-focused psychometric test, which I really love. Can be used to match you for the ideal job that matches your style. And this stands for dominance. So are you more dominant, control, authoritative, decisive? I stands for influential. So outgoing, expressive, having to express and talk through everything, very, very related to extroversion there. S stands for steadiness. So structure, stability, a slower pace of work. High S is like to slow things down and make sure things are properly structured. And C stand for compliance, is the word I like to use. So dotting the I's, crossing the T's, attention to detail, like making sure the administration and the paperwork is right? So that's what DISC is. So DISC can be used to kind of tell you a little bit about how you work with money. For example, the C's, the high C's, very organized, very structured, very attentive to detail. The S's do not like sudden changes, so they need a lot of planning in their life, especially financial planning. If a high S gets a financial shock, it is very disruptive to their entire sense of being and self-worth, and they're very disoriented from financial shocks. I's, very enthusiastic. They tend to be the spendthrifts. They tend to be, the ones that are not really thinking about the details. And then the dominant people like to be in control of their finances. So yes, Marilyn, we can relate it back to money. It just takes a little bit more thinking around how to match the disc to the money.
Yeah.
So Marilyn is an S.
Sandra, yes. And Sandra is an INFJT. Sandra, did you just do the test? And Lisandra, can you remind people where they can do the test? Because I know some people are like itching right now to just get it done. Where can people do the test?
You can do it at 16personalities.com.
Yes. And we're going to drop that in the chat. So we've talked about a psychometric test and certain personality traits that come out of it. And, we didn't want to leave the conversation with you still kind of, and the J is like, okay, so what about the other stuff in my life? How do all of these things come together as I'm even looking at the shock of COVID, and many business persons have experienced, devastating shocks. And even as they ask themselves, how did this person recover? How did that person recover? Is it associated with a personality type? Is there a psychological aspect to it? So at this time, Lisandra, and that we could speak about this forever. So I'm actually going to drop off now, and I'm going to hand over the baton to Lisandra, and Lisandra is going to, you see, we have to shake things up with, and shift it up a little bit.
Yes.
So, Lisandra, this is the 100-meter. Watch me coming in. High knees, high knees, high knees, high knees. And I'm going to reach over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rochelle. So I have the pleasure of introducing Sonia Wynter, who is the associate clinical psychologist at her company, Tea House Therapy. She is my therapist as well. I love therapy. I feel like it's a mind map, like it helps your mind to be able to perform at its peak. So I use all of these tools to be the best version of myself. So let me actually bring up Sonia's bio so that I can introduce her properly to everyone on this panel. So Sonia started Tea House Therapy in 2018 with one goal in mind: to help individuals, couples, and families improve their ability to relate to themselves and each other to create healthy and satisfying relationships. She holds a master's degree in clinical psychology with distinction from UWI-Mona, and is the only Gottman Level 3 trained clinical psychologist in the Caribbean. The Gottman Institute is world-renowned for their amazing frameworks and approaches to mental health. So the Gottman model provides evidence-based approaches to developing masters of intimate relationships. In addition to her work and leadership at Tea House Therapy, Sonia occasionally provides therapy at Family Life Ministries. Throughout her career as a psychologist, she has provided meaningful interventions to individuals, couples, and also groups in local and international settings. She has been married to the former governor of the Bank of Jamaica, Brian Wynter, for over 20 years, and they have 2 young adult daughters. Welcome, 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 Sonia.
Lisandra, goodness gracious, come with me wherever I go, please, and introduce me. That tops them all. Thank you so much, Lisandra. I was sitting here just beaming, listening to you introducing me. Thank you for that introduction. And for having me.
Of course. I'm so happy to be able to engage with you this way. In the backstage, we were saying I'm usually on Sonia's couch. So welcome to my couch, Sonia.
Thank you. Thanks a
So
lot.
Sonia, I would love to hear your thoughts on the discussion that Rochelle and I just had about Myers-Briggs and personalities and money before we get into the rest of the program. What did you think about that conversation?
Well, I found it quite interesting. I have to be honest with you, Lisandra. I don't spend a lot of time specifically with personality and with that particular psychometric test. So that was a reminder, a refresher. I remember doing Myers-Briggs when in my first career when I joined Citibank, and so it was a great refresher. And applying it to money was it's always great to see these conceptual ideas applied in real life. So I really enjoyed that, and of course I found myself thinking about myself and, where do I fit and the hobby, where does he fit? And that explains so much. I wish I had gone back to this ages ago. So that would have helped me a whole lot, So
Right.
Thank you for the refresher. And I think it's the great thing I think about psychometrics, as I was going to say, it not only helps you to understand yourself, but what I like about it always says, these are your strengths, these are your weaknesses. So it gives you something to work with. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It gives you something to focus on. And in a way, I guess that's why I have a job, to help people where, where they feel like they need support on different things, then they come to me, and it's a source of hope. If I know what my weakness is, then I can do something about it.
Yes, absolutely. So tell us about the frameworks that you use then to help your I was going to say clients, but is it clients to understand themselves, how they relate to money, how they make decisions in their lives, how they make business decisions, how they manage themselves? What are the frameworks that you actually propose and use in your practice, Sonia?
Okay, so thanks for that opportunity to speak about that, Lisandra. I work with adult individuals, and I also work with couples. And the conceptual model that I use to work with adults, individuals, is the acceptance and commitment therapy framework. And what that does, it talks about, our life. As we walk through life, we develop different narratives in our mind about ourselves and about the world. And then when we get to certain crises, these narratives come up and they play for us. And the way that we respond to those narratives, sometimes in crisis, don't serve us, right? So what I help people to do is use the narratives to their benefits, rather than feeling like the things that they're saying in their minds about themselves are things that are actually holding them back. And they're this concrete description of reality that they can never break out of. So it's, in a way, it's kind of using your life experiences, usually painful and traumatic experiences, that create narratives to then leverage them in a way that you can have hope and you can have a fulfilling life again. So that's the framework that I apply with adults.
Yes.
And then my favorite is working with couples, and I use the Gottman model for that. And the Gottman model really talks about what kind of interactions are between two people are the interactions that strengthen their friendship, number one, help them to manage conflict better, and to help them to integrate their lives into shared meaning. So those are three domains in a relationship that the Gottman model helps us to identify what are your strengths in those domains and what are your weaknesses. And let's focus on the weaknesses, to give you the kind of relationship that you want. So those are the two broad frameworks that I apply, and that really, I think, make a big difference to the individuals that have an opportunity to work with them.
Right. So the first is acceptance and commitment therapy. That's for individuals. And the second is, what was the name of it?
Is the Gottman model.
The Gottman model.
It's called the Gottman models for couples therapy.
Right. So then how do you relate this back to kind of money, which is a big source of anxiety, trauma, childhood trauma, conflict in relationships, self-esteem and identity is all wrapped up in this money conversation. So what are some of the common stories that you see that individuals and couples have around money?
Okay. Oh, okay. Let's talk about individuals first.
Yes.
So the easiest one for me to share with you, Lisandra, is that for a lot of us, we go through trauma. And you were talking about self-flagellation earlier. Trauma can often create narratives in our mind about ourselves, and the story that I hear, the narrative that I hear the most for people who have been traumatized is the not good enough story, right? And that can percolate into our financial and money management life in terms of, I'm not good enough because I don't have enough discipline. So I'll never be able to save or stick with a job long enough, or excel at a job long enough, or I'll never be an entrepreneur. That's just not me. I'm not good enough for that. I've been told that all my life, and I believe it now. So I can't hope to ever achieve financial security because I am fundamentally, in my core and in my pores, not good enough. Okay?
Yes.
And so that's the narrative that kind of, is paralyzing in that case, and then would relate to many different areas of their life, including how they deal with money.
Yes.
Okay? That's the easiest one to talk about.
Well, stick a pin a second, Sonia, because I would love to hear from the audience. Can you type in the chat and let us know what are some of the stories that you have in your mind around money? That's a running narrative, so that Sonia can see some real life examples here from the people that are watching right now. So continue, Sonia. What are the stories you see with couples around money now?
Okay, the way the categories that the Gottman model uses to evaluate money management with the attitude, money relationships in couples, is that they have a continuum, and at one end of the continuum, there's a continuum which is called what does the meaning of money.
Yes.
Okay. And at one end of that continuum is that money means to me security for the future. Okay. So I'm working hard so that I know that I'm going to be able to have a house where nobody can throw me out, and I'll be secure in my house, right? And I'm working hard to make sure I have 5 houses or whatever, so that income, or I'm working hard to build a business because that is going to give me financial security. So money has the meaning. It means I am safe. I'm not going to be out on the street on my butt with, I'm not going to be homeless. I'm not going to be destitute. I'm not going to be dependent on anybody. And so that if money has that meaning to me, I'm going to have it's going to define my relationship with money and my spending.
Yes.
Okay. And then at the other end of the spectrum is money means that it's going to give me the kind of life that I deserve here.
Yes.
No. Okay. Money is because I'm working all my life so I can live now. Forget tomorrow. What all we got is now. So I want to live now. And that's what money means to me. Okay. And then, of course, you can imagine couples who are at different places on that continuum. That's a problem, sort of a thing. Because especially if their money is shared, there are couples where they still have their own little
silos.
Yes, exactly. And so they're happy, everybody can. But most couples, they decide to pool their income and their dreams and plans and so on. And if they have different attitude, if they have different meanings to money, then that creates a problem. Of course, the different meaning that you have, of course, arises as far as this conceptual model is concerned, out of your life experiences. How was money handled in your family of origin? What happened in your life? Did trauma play a part? Did you go from rags to riches, to use an exaggerated example? And
or
how
riches
has
to rags?
Or riches to rags, exactly.
Yes.
That's a traumatic. That's a traumatic as well. And how does that now influence your relationship with money? And how does that relate to your partner's relationship with money? And what are we going to do about that if we're going to live in harmony together? So those are the sort of different approaches that those two models apply.
Exactly. So I want to take a look at the comments. So Jarangela is saying her money story is, will I save enough to keep me sustained? So that's more on the security side of the spectrum. She also has, will there be enough money to start a family? How can I spend less, right? And then on the other side, we have Agribiz Tech Solutions. There's an abundance of it and we deserve it, right? And Yan, one life to live, right?
Exactly.
So guys, tell us in the comments, are you on the safety side or are you on the I deserve it side? So seeing these stories, Sonia, what are your thoughts when you see these stories in the chat?
Here's the thing, they reminds me of different people in my life who have had similar approaches. I remember when I was in college, having a friend, she says, I'm here for one reason. I'm here to get my college degree so that I can go out there, earn money, and live the life I wanted to live. I wanted to travel. I wanted to see different places, sort of a thing. And it was for her, it was a degree was about what she was going to do with her life. She almost didn't care what she was going to be doing 9 to 5. She could care less. It was about she was going to earn and she was going to live, sort of a thing. You know what I mean? And that was a pretty profound motivator for her, but kind of unusual. You know what I mean? That's not usually how we think about our university careers. You know what I mean? So that's what that kind of reminds me of, and how it's different for different people. That's what makes the world so fascinating.
Yes, so I want to relate this back to our conversation on personality tests. Marilyn is on the safety side. Mystique is on the safety side. Monica is on the safety side with a little "I deserve this."
Durangela, you know what I want to know? I wonder if those people who are putting their safety side, tell me what your partner is. And as well, I'm on the safety side. My partner is what? Tell me. You know what I mean? If you know, and if you don't, guess what? You have a conversation to have tonight.
Right. So the safety side people, I believe, are more the Sentinels, ISFJ, ESFJ, right? ISTJ, they'll be very much on the safety side. And I'm thinking a lot of the people in the chat are INFJs, ENFJs on the safety side as well. So we're seeing a lot of Js, meeting, organization, and discipline. Then we have a few Ps coming up with "I deserve it," abundance, one life to live, right?
I like what Skill says.
Yeah, so Skill
when Eskimo have money.
When Eskimo have money, then buy fridge. That's saying curb my spending. Right? So Mystique, who is on the safety side, her partner says, "I deserve it now." Sandra is borderline. Jan is saying COVID has made us on the safety side. So yes, tell us about that, Sonia. How has the pandemic affected the stories and our relationship to money using the frameworks that you use from your psychological perspective?
You know what's interesting? COVID has created, well, it almost goes without saying, tremendous stress for people. You know what I mean? And for some people, coping with stress revolves around money. Yes. You know what I mean? Coping when there's the kind of stress that COVID has introduced to their lives has, for some people, made them so apprehensive, so anxious about the future. It's almost like they've shut down all spending, and kind of hunkered down as it were, in their financial lives, because they're just so anxious and worried. I mean, they've never seen a reality or expected a reality such as the one we live in. And then for other people, stress means spend. You know what I mean? And that's listen, that's how I feel good about myself. I'm feeling anxious, spend a little money, get me some retail therapy. You know what I mean? And so that's how it can be manifesting in different people's lives. I remember I was in the States the other day, and I was flicking through a real estate magazine. And of course, that's The Voice. The source was a real estate magazine. It was saying that in the States, it's a seller's market in the States for real estate. And one of the reasons is that more people are staying home, so they want nicer homes to stay in. Like, who'd have thought? You know what I mean? So I think your default, whether it has to do with your personality, whether it has to do with trauma, whether it has to do with the meaning of money, whatever your default relationship is with money, can either be intensified because of stress, you know what I mean? Or it can be completely upended and turned on its head because of stress.
Yes. There is a term that we use on COVIDCast called financial anxiety. That is something that people are experiencing a lot of during the pandemic, and it has completely changed their relationship with money in many, many cases, because our identities are so wound up in our relationship to money. For some people, they cannot separate their identity from the money in their bank account. And this, I found, is particularly true of men. Men, in my experience, their confidence is tied with their provider identity and their ability to earn and so on. So my question for you, Sonia, is you talked to us in the backstage chat about self-compassion versus self-esteem. And for me, and you talked a little bit about identity and self-esteem and how we have to be compassionate. So tell us about that framework and how we can use it to manage some of this financial anxiety.
Okay. So, as Rochelle said earlier, right? It's true. Self-esteem is a very important part of mental health,
Yes.
and mental resilience, you know. But more and more, they're finding that in times of crisis, when we have failed at something, which every single one of us will at some
Mhm.
point in our life, okay? When we fail at something, when things have not gone the way we expect them to, you know what I mean? um and we experience some emotional distress, we experience tremendous disappointment or betrayal or rejection or shame or
Yes.
embarrassment or just a feeling of inadequacy or confusion. All of those emotions are pretty hard to sit with, okay?
Mhm.
And when they come up, we can tend to start blaming ourselves as if, what's wrong with me? I need to pull myself together. I should be handling this. This shouldn't be holding me back. I need to get it together. And that kind of self-judgment robs us of self-esteem.
Yes.
Okay. And we can get into that cycle that can keep us stuck,
Yeah.
really stuck. And that's when all of these emotions come down on us, and the way we're responding to those emotions keep us paralyzed in a way. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? And so the research, it's about maybe 10-15 years old, is demonstrating the situations such as I just described. Individuals are better served if they can have self-compassion for themselves, because most often when and think about it, self-compassion is about how would you treat somebody that you really care about if they were suffering the way that you were, you
Right.
know and the truth is that the way we treat other people, the way we treat ourselves and speak to ourselves in times of distress, we would never dream of handling and speaking to somebody else in that way. And we have
Mhm.
this instinctive understanding that when somebody else is suffering, what they need is compassion.
Yeah.
We want to help them out of that hole. We have a kind of instinctive understanding of that. You know what I mean? But it's not a rule that we apply to ourselves, even though it's also true in
Mhm.
ourselves when we are suffering. And I'm talking mainly about emotional suffering brought about by life's crises,
Yes.
when we're suffering, to the extent that we can acknowledge, number one, that we are suffering. Yes, we're having a hard time. And the thing about it is, we do these comparisons, these social comparisons. There are children in Africa starving, so I need my problem, I need to get it together, sort of a thing. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I've had, Lisandra, I've been seeing a lot of people who have lost people they love because of COVID. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And they're still hard on themselves about, so many people have it worse than me. So it's like they cannot even come to terms that their situation is difficult and
Yes.
painful. And it's
Yes.
probably one of the most painful things they'll ever go through. And the fact that they can't acknowledge that to themselves, number one, they can't grieve properly. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Mhm.
And they can't allow themselves the kindness that can give them the resources to kind of thrive again. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
Um,
I want to tie this back to the conversation we were having about self-judgment. So we get our results and we judge ourselves for when we see our psychometric results and we say, well, I
exactly.
shouldn't be that way. I shouldn't be this way. But your whole thing around self-compassion is, and I call it full acceptance of all parts of yourself. Bring
Exactly.
all the parts to light.
Your humanity. Your
Yeah.
humanity.
Honor all the sides of yourself, accept it, have compassion for yourself. Yes, I'm naturally more fluid, so then I know that I have to put some systems in place for myself to manage that side of myself, right?
Exactly.
Or
Exactly.
yes,
But
I'm
but Lisandra, you can only do that. You can only come up with accommodations for yourself if you first accept that, I have this
exactly,
I have this challenge and it's okay. So now what am I gonna do about it now? It's easier for you to
exactly,
reach for the support when you've kind of accepted your humanity as everybody has something. You have your thing, I have my thing, we all have
yes,
something. You know what I
yes.
mean?
So that is what I understand self-compassion to be in the context of the discussion that we're having. So I want to end on something that's coming up in the chat. We have whole heap of people in the chat who they're on the safety side and their partner is on the spend I deserve it side. So when you're in front of couples like this, how do you coach them to come to some mutual understanding, Sonia?
Okay, it's a two-step process. Okay,
Yeah.
there's one that we call, there's an intervention, a wonderful intervention that we call dreams within conflict. And what that approach is saying is that within every conflict that two people have, if you imagine this is a conflict that they have, below their position on the matter is a dream. Okay.
Yes.
A deep-seated dream, but because it's a difference, usually couples stay on the surface at each other, and they never stop for a second to kind of dig down deep into their partner and what's your dream behind your position. Okay.
Yes.
So the first step is the first step is guiding them through this wonderful conversation. And I give them a script. You're the speaker, you're the listener. Here are your questions, here are your answers, sort of a thing. Okay. And I guide them through that conversation so that they can each get to the dream that holds their position on this conflict. Okay.
Yes.
And usually that's when the conversation about, you know what, when I was a kid, this was what was going on. I lost everything. My parents separated. We were left with nothing. And I've always just felt terribly vulnerable when it comes, because I know how fleeting money can be, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? And so people get to understand their positions better, and their partner gets to see that raw, deep edge of themselves. So that's a dream. And then we have a second intervention called compromise circles. It's great also, where we have two concentric circles, and the inner circle we try to keep as small as possible. And in the inner circle, I help the couples to put the things on which they do not want to negotiate. These are the things I don't want to give up, because if I give these things up, I'll feel like I'm giving up my soul. I'll be giving up a part of myself if I have to compromise on these things in this little circle here. But guess what? On this matter, there's a bigger circle, and there are a whole heap of other things I can give up all of these other things in the outer circle. And both couples do that. And we kind of do an overlay process to see, okay, let's do some horse trading here. And through that we can kind of come up with a compromise. The thing about it is, I hope I have enough time. Listen, I'm sorry I'm getting so passionate about
it. I love the passion. Please continue.
The thing about it is that one of the things that the research that the Gottman Institute has uncovered, listen to this, is that there are conflicts between two people that are solvable, easily solvable. Yes. Okay. But sometimes couples don't even have the tools to do that. So sometimes we start there, and I give them the tools to solve their solvable problems. But other problems which are rooted in their personality, guess what? Are going to be perpetual problems. Okay, because these are two different people.
Yeah.
Okay. And guess what? When it comes to conflict, more problems are perpetual than are solvable.
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things that you have to do when we do we might be trying to solve a perpetual problem, and you can't. Yeah. It's almost like you have to come up with a compromise that might work this weekend, and next weekend the problem is going to come up again. We have to be willing to re-compromise again, sort of a thing, And so that exercise, once I give them that tool, it's a tool that they have to realize that some conflict that they have, like money, right? They're going to have to use those compromise circles at different times and for different things, because, we might have this compromise that might work if we want to buy a yacht, but then if we want to go for lunch, we might have a different compromise circle. That's all.
Right.
It's just helping talk to each other.
Yes. You have been opening my eyes to the kind of frameworks that we can use to enhance the communication between two completely different personality types. And I really love the dreams within conflict. Getting at the dream beneath the source of conflict. I really love that. You talked about the meaning and the stories that we give to money. You talked about self-compassion versus self-esteem, and fully accepting all parts of ourselves in order for us to be able to help ourselves manage different things within our lives, especially money. I want to end by saying that we live in a society of scarcity. We do not live in an abundant society, right? So there are a lot of people in our society that have...
I saw that. Never mind, Kurt.
Kurt, come distract me from my point now. Kurt, I want his father, ENTP. So Kurt, you love to debate. Right? But there are a lot of stories in our society around scarcity, especially around money. So I'm sure that has made a lot of people flip to the safety side, because we're on the edge in terms of financial security in this society in many, many instances. Whereas there are other societies of abundance where money is not a concern. And that's a completely different set of stories that happen in societies like that. So final thought on that comment, Sonia, and then we'll wrap up for the evening.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess I want to just mention that too. There, we even within our own society,
Yeah.
there are people who have been born into disenfranchisement as well, and
Yes.
have no expectation, no hope that they'll ever break free of that life of disenfranchisement. And so their response to money, there's this expectation that, that's not for me as well. So I think it just kind of underscores how our life can form our narratives. And I think what these psychometric tests help us to do is to put a spotlight on that, so that we can use it. We can use it. We can our blind spots can be brought to us, so that we can grow. We're all a work in progress. And we can use this information to grow.
Absolutely. I'm gonna guess your Myers-Briggs, Sonia. Do you know yours?
I just did it just before we start. Let me go find it real
me
quick.
guess it
Let's see how well
first.
you did.
Guys, let's guess Sonia's Myers-Briggs in the chat. I want to see your guesses, and then I'm going to give my guess, and then Sonia, you tell us what it actually is.
Okay.
So what do you guys think Sonia's, you're clearly an extrovert, Sonia, because of how you communicate on the screen. You're vibrant, you're passionate, you're enthusiastic. So for me, that's clear extroversion. And then I think you are intuitive and feelings. You're in touch with emotions. That's why you have your clients very feelings oriented. And then the last part is hard for me. I'm flipping between a P and a J, but I'm just going to guess J. So my guess for Sonia is ENFJ. So we see Monica saying INTP. Julie Jack is guessing ENTJ. She thinks you're a thinker. Marilyn is guessing ENFP. I'm almost at the ENFP, but I'm going to stick my pin on ENFJ. Monica is saying ENFJ. Richard is saying ENFJ. Sonia, what is your personality type?
Guess what? Guess what, Lisandra? I guessed it for I did a guess before I actually did it. Okay. Yeah. And I was right there with you. But guess what it came out at? It came out at ESFJA.
So we were close. She's an ESFJ, not an ENFJ. So you have a little bit more practical than intuition. So I can see that in the quality of the research that you're doing, and you're putting on all the theories and so on. So actually that makes a lot of sense to me. So
I'm going to go with that then.
ESFJ. So thank you so much for joining us, Sonia. You added so much value to this conversation. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Lisandra.
And book my appointment, please. Let me just...
See you on Thursday.
Right. Thank you, Sonia. So, guys, what a conversation. Wow. Please tell me in the chat what you guys thought. What was your biggest takeaway from this conversation with me, Rochelle, and Sonia? I love to see it. What is one thing that you're going to remember from tonight's episode on your personality and your money? I love to see those thoughts and reflections. Remember to subscribe to the mailing list to get the SME memo at smallbusinessportal.com. You can subscribe there. Some of you guys put your emails in the chat, and so we're going to add you to the mailing list because we have an amazing memo for this episode that goes through all the Myers-Briggs stuff that I had up on the screen. So if you want that memo, you have to be on the mailing list, and we have a great memo every week. The other thing I want to talk about is what's coming up next week. So Sonia's husband is the former governor of the Bank of Jamaica, which I bring up because next week we're actually going to be talking about inflation, and we're going to have people from the BOJ on next week to talk about why is the price of everything going up around the world and in Jamaica. Why is the US dollar so expensive right now? Why are the prices of everyday items climbing so much? Next week's episode, we're going to talk about inflation that is deflating your pocket. So Tonight, as always, I want to thank our sponsors. Of course, PSOJ is presenting this in association with NCB and JMMB Group. And I want to see some of the comments. What are you guys saying that is your biggest takeaway from tonight? Monifa's takeaway is talk about finances with your partner and that your personality type heavily influences your spending habits. Jarangela is saying how our actions are not just random, they're aligned to a bigger purpose and actually aligned to our underlying personalities or underlying compulsions and impulses that come from who we really are beneath the surface. Sandra, understanding more about my personality type and what that means for how I approach money decisions. Kurt, takeaway, I need to get paid for this personality. Kurt, you give me jokes all night. Well, thank you for that comment. Thank you. Ski, understanding my partner more. Yes, using these tools, the dreams within the conflict, the circles within the circles, the self-compassion versus self-esteem, the DISC psychometric test, the Myers-Briggs psychometric test, and there's so many more from that. Althea, how to test for our personality again. Hillary, join late. Drat. All right, so thank you so much for joining us, guys. And remember to show up same time, same place next week where we're going to be talking about inflation. Thank you again.
So you have a great idea to start a business, but you don't know where to start. We completely understand. You have a lot of questions and almost no answers. Smallbusinessportal.com is here to help. At smallbusinessportal.com, you gain access to information on loans, grants, and investment opportunities from verified financial institutions. Guess what you also get? Useful business tips, access to training. All these services combine to make your business idea into a reality. Start your journey today at smallbusinessportal.com.